here we are again. Welcome to Behind the Visual with Mark Hansen, where I interview all the people responsible for creating all the images and videos you see out in your world every day. And I am your host, advertising and lifestyle photographer Mark Hansen. And guys, today my guest is Nick Onken. Nick is a world-renowned photographer who has shot campaigns for brands such as Coca Cola, Chevy, Adidas, Powerade, etc. He's also been shooting celebrities like Justin Bieber, Jessica Alba, Tom Hanks, Usher, and many more for years. And believe it or not, this guy's got more going on. He is involved with the charity Pencils of Promise. He shoots for them and his very popular podcast called Neon Radio. And last but not least, he is also making custom hats. Don't know how this dude has time to do anything else. And I really appreciate him taking the time to be on this podcast. So let's talk with Nick Onken. Thank you, Nick, for doing this. I appreciate it, especially now that everybody's quarantined in the house and I can't go anywhere. So tell us a little bit about you, dude. How'd you get into being a photographer? You know, what got you to the point where you are now? And I know you're doing all kinds of different stuff, but lead us up to, you know, your interest in photography, how you got to that point and how you are at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing photography for a good 15 years, 10, 15 years now. I mean, I started out as a graphic designer. That's what I went to school for. And I kind of picked up a digital camera, you know, amidst my design, my freelance graphic design days to, you know, basically just once digital kind of got to a state of decency, technology wise and file wise, back in 2003, I want to say, maybe a little bit before that, I picked up a digital camera to create assets for just for my design work, and taken a class in high school and college of photography, but you know, just because it was required as part of the design programs, and but I never really thought anything of it. And then just once digital kind of hit or started to become good enough, it was I started getting interested a little bit more. Once I got the camera, I started shooting just random stuff, I mean, from like whatever, a cup on the table to different textures, and you know, just experimenting and learning and playing around with it. And it was really I really enjoyed it. You know, never thought anything of it outside of a hobby or to create stuff for my design work, but I ended up convincing a nonprofit design client of mine to split the expenses on a trip to Africa and build them a photo library, because my friend had gone and he was like doing IT work, but he, you know, this organization had flown him over to Africa to build an IT network over there. And I was like, man, I want to do that. I want to do something like that. So I ended up like pitching this client to build them a photo library. And, you know, I was like, I couldn't do obviously graphic design. You don't need to be there. So photography was what I pitched them, and they said, to my surprise, said yes. And that was kind of what really got me that trip. You know, I went to 4 countries in Africa. I went to Zimbabwe,
Wow.
Uganda, Kenya, Burundi. Yeah, and then I went to like spent a month in Europe after that. Kind of the same organization. Really, it was just like just shooting people in places and whatever I wanted to shoot. So I got back, you know, and the client was happy. They were like, you know, I look back on those images and I'm like, oh my God. However, they were happy at the time,
Which is all that matters when
um,
it comes down to it.
exactly. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I literally was just there. They said yes. I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. Just gonna jump off the cliff and figure this out, and weave the parachute as I'm falling through the sky. So yeah, that was that was a huge eye-opening trip for me in both two ways. It was my perspective of the world, and experiencing the developing world for the first time, which was, you know, a huge shift of what I was used to. You know, I'd never been to the developing world before. It was,
Yeah.
you know, to experience such poverty and such, you know, but also happiness and joy of people that had nothing yet were, you know, happy and joyful and grateful. And, you know, it was such a contrast to where when I got back. I just didn't even know. It took me like a couple months to actually just assimilate back into this world.
Oh, I'm sure, man.
Um, so that was a huge, you know, eye opener in respect. And so that's all, you know, played a part in everything that I've done up until today and into the future, as business wise and philanthropy wise. But it also opened my eyes to actually being a photographer. I didn't even know what that looked like or what that would have seemed like. But I was like, yeah, I mean, people pay me to travel the world and take photos. I could get used to this.
Yeah, not a rough
And
gig at
so
all, for sure.
yeah, exactly. So that's kind of like how it started. And then I just, from when I got back, I just started kind of shooting a lot more, looking into it, randomly connected with a photographer out in Seattle. This is where I was living at the time, where I grew up. And I was supposed to do website updates for him, design wise. And then I just started bombarding him with questions, photography questions. And eventually he's just like, hey, you should just come out on set with us and hang out and you can kind of see what it's like. And then eventually I started assisting for him. And then, this was all kind of just like Seattle commercial stuff. And so it opened my eyes to the world of a commercial or just a photographer in general. Like I had no idea that you could actually make money as taking pictures. Like this just was a whole new concept to me. Because at that point, 2003, like nobody knew what there's no internet
Oh
in the
yeah,
sense of, photography wasn't online.
right.
This was still very, very, if you wanted photos online, you pretty much had to scan them. The digital technology was just getting to that point, but still nobody had nobody had really kind of married and brought stuff online because everybody was so analog back then. All the top photographers, all the big commercial photographers were there like digital? Hell no. Like
Oh yeah.
nobody wanted to touch it, nobody wanted to adapt, nobody wanted to move into it because it was so foreign. So that's kind of where I got my start, and then it just kind of developed from there. I ended up assisting for him for a little while, shooting my own stuff, taking graphic design projects just to sustain myself. And then I moved down to actually ended up one of my first big gigs was for Nike about like in end of 2004, beginning of 2005, shooting all these pro sports players that I had to Google them to find out who they were. But that was kind of my big my first big job, and it was like I was learning on the fly there as well. I was just like, had to figure it all out as I was going along. And I'd never done a job where I had to travel around the US and like find assistants and find production and find equipment and find all these things. But, I think that you tap into your network and ask people, and somebody eventually, has a guy who has a guy who, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I found an
Oh yeah.
assistant who had the equipment, who ended up being able to drive down to San Diego. And I had like 4 days to figure this out with Christmas in between.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, that was my first big job.
Damn,
And,
man.
and I pulled it off and I kept those contacts. I kept those relationships, and, ended up, I thought I was going to have, I was like, oh, I got this Nike job. I'm like, the ball is rolling. I'm in. And I didn't see anything like that for 2 years after that. So you never know, like this business is so up and down. And I ended up, I took that money and I moved to Paris and lived there for half a year
Well,
because I wanted to
damn.
live in another country. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I got started.
Oh, very cool. Hey, hold on just a second. I'm gonna switch Wi-Fi's I'm on, so I'll probably drop off for just a second, I think. But it should come right back on. Maybe I won't drop off. I don't know. Okay, are we back?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Kept giving me a thing saying it was unstable. My internet was unstable, so I thought I'd switch it up. Okay,
Huh.
cool. So the charity, was that Pencils of Promise?
No, it was just like it was another organization. Pencils of
Okay.
Promise didn't come till a few years later, which I had met Adam Braun through a friend of mine who I just was working for with Aviator Nation. Actually, he was working at that. Um, and I stopped in one day and I was like, yeah, I'm just like randomly talking to this guy. And I was like, I'm looking for a developing world charity to get involved with. And he was like, oh, you should talk to my friend Adam. He's building schools in Laos. And, um, so he's like, I'll connect you. So he connected us. And then, Adam and I met up in New York and had a beer. And I was just like, this guy's going to build something big. He's got the brain to build a business around it, but he also has a bleeding heart for the cause. And you don't see a lot of, charity founders with both. Um, most of them either have one or the other, and so
Oh
they
yeah.
kind of tend to not go anywhere. But I saw this in him, and I was like, I think this guy's gonna build something big, and I want to be a part of it. And so he's like, I'm going to Laos in December. If you want to come, I can't pay for you. I can't pay you, but if you want to come, you're welcome to come. It's like,
Oh hell. Hey man, can you still hear me? Kind
really
of fell.
built
Oh, there you
a
go.
yeah, we built a library of imagery, or a library of images for them to use, and they still use some of those today. We've definitely shot way more. I've been to every country multiple times now that they operate in, um, and so it's been a good collaboration.
Damn, that's very cool. They've got some pretty big hitters on that charity, don't they? I know it's like was like Gary Vaynerchuk, I think, is on there from
Yeah,
VaynerMedia.
Gary V's on the board. I've met him through the charity, and like Jim Quick and Lewis Howes and a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
Bieber has been part of it, more so just like a donor. He's not really done anything, but we've shot him. We took him down to the jungles of Guatemala at one point, and he got to see the schools. Because at one point he was donating like $1 of every ticket for one of his tours to Pencils of Promise.
Oh damn.
So we got to take him down to the field and see the work, and he got to play with the kids and stuff like that. So um, yeah, there's been a lot of people. Usher's been a part of it, but that's a big part because not because, but like Scooter Braun is Adam's brother.
Yeah, I kind of
Um,
thought that might be the connection there when I heard the Braun is the last name.
yeah, so that's kind of how all of that's transpired. But I mean, everyone's working to build for a great cause, so it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, yeah. I think if it all works out like that and just happens that you end up meeting all these cool people along the way, it's a good thing.
Yeah,
Did
absolutely.
did the Pistols of Promise thing, did meeting all these people, did that help in your career day, or is it just people you just met and you just ended up shooting and
Yeah, no, I mean, like, definitely I've met a lot of people through that, and I photograph, I met a lot of, I met Scooter through that, and we became friends, and then that led to shooting Justin probably 4 or 5 times, and I've, became friends with Usher through that, and shot him a couple times, had him on the podcast. So it's been a good, I met Lil Jon through kind of that crew, and he hired me to shoot him, and so it's been definitely like a great, it was definitely a huge relationship builder, that's for sure.
yeah, damn. And I've come to realize that in years of shooting, that's pretty much the way it works, man. It's all comes down. Everybody says it's all about who you know, but I think it's all about who knows you and who likes you more than it is who you know. Because I can know people, but it doesn't mean they're going to like me enough to hire me or want to hire me. I think it comes down to people who can hire you and who actually like you, and I think
Yeah,
that's a big part of it.
absolutely. Exactly. Yeah, who like you, who want to hire you, and like now it's like so much about the experience of working with you as well as the work that you create. Um,
Yeah, yeah, because
because
everybody's a photographer now.
yeah, everyone's a photographer. It
Yeah,
used to not be that way. It used to be, the work, people were sought out by their work, and like, even if they were a total asshole to work with, like people would still seek them out to work with them because they love their work. I don't really see that much these days. Like now you have to be amazing and have like the personality and like want to be a good person to work with.
yeah,
Otherwise
which I
people
think
just leave that, right?
can get rid of some people because I think some people can be good as good photographers, but just don't have the personality, and probably keeps them from getting some jobs. I would think from
I would,
my
yeah, I would
experience
think
in it
so.
because it seems a lot of it because I've had clients want me to shoot stuff that I don't shoot, and it's all because they like me. It had nothing to do with the fact that they thought I was going to be great shooting still life or shooting food, which I didn't want to do in the first place. They just seemed to, they just seemed to like me and wanted me to do it. So that's the way I ended
Yeah,
up doing it.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So what do you do to get clients? You don't have a rep, do you? Or do you?
No, I split with my last rep probably like 3 years ago. So I don't know if
Dude, they're hit and
agents really
miss,
do
aren't
much.
they?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
even in this day and age, like since the wave of the internet, like I don't know how much you really need them. I mean, if you're new to the business, they can teach you how to like do it. But I had an agent for like for 10 years. I started with Greenhouse, or I had another agent that started with then I had Greenhouse, then I had Kate Ryan, and like I learned so much from having agents back, especially back when all of it started. I didn't know how to bid jobs or get producers or do all
Yeah.
these things, but through all those years, and I've shot so many different types of campaigns, so many different clients, I learned a lot through that. And at this point, like if commercial jobs come through, I know how to price myself. I know how to get a producer. I know how to do all these things. But I'm also finding, I've also found over the last few years um, that, just a lot of the commercial jobs, it's just not what it used to be. And like the
Yeah.
rates aren't what they used to be and all that. So, kind of makes me less interested in a lot of the work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The rates are definitely not what they used to be. And I'm not going to as many cool places as I used to. I used to go out of the country and shoot more. I used to, shoot, go to beaches and shoot more. And it's just not happening as much for
Yeah,
whatever reason.
nobody wants to spend the money.
Yeah. Unfortunately. So,
And
so what do you,
they have to produce 10 times the amount of content for the same budget that they have.
oh,
That's the other
yeah.
problem.
Are you getting these
They have,
people that they want to own everything too? I'm getting clients
oh
now.
yeah.
They want to own everything. Yeah, it
Oh
used
yeah.
not unlike it used to be like, oh, we need these images for 2 years, 3 years. Now it's we want to own them, but they
Oh
don't
yeah.
want to pay you what people used to pay for owning an image.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. And then like if now what I'm seeing is that good enough is fine, and they'll just go to the next person who will give up the copyright, or the
Yeah,
next young photographer who wants to shoot for that brand. Sorry. Um, so yeah, they'll just go to the next photographer who wants to um who'll take the job, or who wants to shoot for that brand name or whatever.
yeah,
So that's what I'm seeing. There's still higher level jobs out there. But even just talking, I was talking to my old agent the other day, and through an email exchange, and he's just like, yeah, like rates are just dropping left and right. And like I talked to other people through the industry, and it's the same thing. So, it's an interesting world out there. And I mean, now what's going to happen after Corona apocalypse?
yeah. I don't know. I keep hoping that maybe it's going to be one of those things where everything's backing up right now because nobody can shoot. So all these shoots are backing up, and then there'll be just like this wave of photography that needs to be done, and all of a sudden we'll have more work than we can handle, returning, everybody. But then again, if it's like everything, most of the time in my career, everybody wants to shoot on the same day or the same week. So you have two, three clients or whatever they're calling, they all want to shoot the exact same week.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that could very well happen. So, I guess more work is better than, well, like not work,
Well, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
right?
Yeah. So at this point, what are you doing as far as getting new work, new clients? Is it just a name thing and your name's getting thrown out to people and they're calling you, or are you still like actively pursuing new clients?
Yeah, I mean, you always have to stay proactive. It's the
Yeah.
same. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what's working these days, because in the world of marketing your photography, like, yeah, now everybody's a photographer. Everybody's sending
Yeah.
out emails. Everybody's sending out direct mails. So I'm doing some of that stuff. It's just that I think it's a matter of finding the right relationships and the right connections.
I think that
Um,
getting in person meetings, which are difficult to do, but it seems like those are the ones that I get the most response from. If I can get in a meeting and meet somebody, that those are the
yeah,
people who will at least return an email or a message later, and those are the ones who'll hire you down the road. But I think it's
yeah. If
rare
you
that I've
can
ever gotten to
get
shoot.
a meeting,
Yeah,
then
getting a
that's the
meeting is
first step.
ridiculously hard,
Mhm.
and for some reason, I have found it's almost easier for me to get meetings in New York than it is in, say, Raleigh, North Carolina, for whatever reason. And I don't know
Right.
what that reasoning is for that.
Where are you
You would,
based?
I'm in Charlotte. I'm based in
Oh, you're in
Charlotte.
Charlotte. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I shoot
Got it.
some in New York. Um, like you travel around, but it seems to be easier to get those meetings. Although LA, I can't get a meeting in LA. I can get like 2 meetings in LA if I'm trying for an entire week. I get 2 people who say, "Oh, we can meet you." Nobody
Yeah.
else seems to be up for it.
Yeah, it's pretty
Well,
tough.
all right, dude. I saw on your website you have this ridiculous amount of publicity about you, um, like magazines and all these articles. How the hell does that happen? You have some like guru PR person that's working for you, or just is this something else where you just run into the right people?
I don't have PR. I just have a lot of it's network and relationships and people reaching out. I mean, some people just find my work and they want to do different things, or just random connections come through different people and that I meet. And that's pretty much how I've gotten any of that press, is just through people reaching out or knowing people. It's all relationships, really.
Are you going out to parties and meeting all these people,
Um,
like gatherings and that kind of thing?
yeah, I don't. I mean, I think New York also is just a place where people are just like, oh, you meet somebody and they're like, oh, you do this.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
you got to meet this person, and like that's the one amazing thing about New York is just I never go to any industry parties at all. Not that there is any. There used
yeah,
to be some really cool ones, but I haven't seen any of those lately. So it's most of the press has come through, so whether it's entrepreneurs or different types of people. It's a lot of it's just like, oh, you got to meet this person. Oh, what kind of stuff do you need? Oh, you need this. Oh, great, like you should meet this person, and then somebody will connect me, and then this something like that'll happen. That's more of that's more of where the press comes from, is just knowing people, not necessarily out and about, and like people knowing what you do and what you're looking for. I mean, I think talking about that stuff, um, if people know what you need, a lot of times, at least in New York, people will be like, oh, you need this. Okay, great. I know this person who does this. And then like they connect you, and then like you never know what happens from there.
yeah. That makes sense. So, was the whole photography thing the reason you left Seattle to come to New York? Just thought it'd be a better place for you to be.
Yeah. I mean, like I moved to LA for 3 years because I wanted a photography hub, like a city that was a photography hub.
Yeah,
And I lived in LA for 3 years. I didn't love it, but I was still starting my career out at the time, and so I didn't really know anybody. And like LA is one of those cities where unless you like know people, it's hard to get in anywhere. It's hard to know what's going on. So, I found myself sitting home, 6 nights a week, forcing myself to go out once a week. And then I was like, I had ended up like connecting. I was shooting for Cosmo out here. So I was coming back and forth to New York. And then I started my career, started to get like take off a little bit towards making more money. And I was like, oh, well, I can probably get a new place, get a bigger space. Cause I was living in like a room, like a Cracker Jack box, paying like monthly rent in LA for
yeah.
3 years. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna move here for a couple months. Ended up being 3 years, and like in this house with like two other roommates, and I was like, I need to get out of here because it was like a sweat box. My friends would make fun of me because it was like I had my queen size bed, and then I literally had enough space for a desk, that I had my computer all set up on. I could literally sit on my bed and work on my computer, and then the other half of the room was my printer, and I would just be like cranking out like website stuff, revising my portfolios just constantly. I'd be like sitting in there for like 12, 15 hours a day, just like working, and eventually, it all paid off. Um, but yeah, then I started going back and forth to New York, and at that point, I was like, where I could get a bigger place in LA, I was like, I don't even really like living here. Maybe I should just move to New York. I've had so much fun there. And so I did. 6 months later, picked up, moved to New York, and that was sorry.
All right, man.
Um so uh so I yeah, so I was like that, and that was when I got my rep too. It was like 2000. Oh no, I moved to LA in 2006. So 2008 was when I got my first, and end of 2008 is when I got my first agent, and
Now,
then
did you
like my
actively
first,
go out and looking for an agent?
yeah, actually I had an agent in LA. I always forget because she, like
Yeah.
nothing ever really happened with that agent.
Yeah, I've had a few of
Um,
those.
yeah, so I can always forget that was my first agent. So I had her for a while, and then I started looking for agents. And I found one in New York that I ended up landing with, which is Greenhouse. And they really helped kick off my career. Like they helped connect me. They gave me the credibility that I needed to
Mhm.
like sell a client on um, sell a client on me, and that really helped. And then from that first, one of my first big campaigns was for Secret deodorant, and shot that in Miami. That was my first huge production. I had like 30 people on set. I was just figuring it out as I went
Wow.
along.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Full producer, 3 assistants, digital tech, stylist, hair, makeup, their assistants, and like
So when you were
each.
doing your first shoot like that, so you were doing this first shoot, because I remember my first one and I had no clue what I was doing. I was basically pulling it out of my ass. Um, did your reps help you? It's like, hey, you need 3 assistants on this, and help you
Oh
figure that
yeah,
out, or was that what you were just like? I saw somebody or heard somebody had 3 assistants. I'm going to have 3 assistants plus a digital tech.
yeah, no, my reps completely walked me through everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like hand holding.
Yeah.
They're like, you need
Yep.
to like find a good assistant. If you need help, we'll find you assistants. And like, I didn't know anybody in Miami, but like we found that my reps found the right producer, and then the producer helped me find the crew. And like, I was just like, look, I need to find people that know what they're doing, that like have, I was using, I would use assistants that had know lighting better than I do, because my
Yeah.
whole portfolio was built off of natural light. But somehow my first big gig like this, it was literally a night shot. It was a girl jumping into a pool at night at a pool party. So there was like 15 extras in the background. And we Frankenstein this thing. Like we had to shoot. We had to get. I mean, the art director was loving it because of this girl in a bikini jumping into a pool at a pool party. So the way we had to construct the shot was like, we had to like get these girls. They had to be doing the perfect secret like pose in the
Oh
air.
God.
And so we had to get the casting. We had these girls jumping in bikinis on trampolines on video. And he, like, I tell you what, he was the highlight of his whole office, because all the guys were just like coming over to his computer to watch the casting. It was
I'm sure they
hilarious.
were.
So what we did, we had to shoot the girls on black. So we shot them outside on a black backdrop so that we could pull them out, pull out, like knock them out of the background just in
Right.
case we couldn't nail it in the frame. So we shot the girls doing the perfect thing on the trampolines. We shot two alternate girls, and then we actually shot in the pool at this house. And it was, we had to like dry the girl off every time she jumped in the pool, and like we had to orchestrate all of the extras in the background, and then like the front flash, and like open up the shutter to draw the lights in. So it was like a very complex shot, especially because it was action. There she's
Yeah.
jumping into a pool at night when you don't have, all you can do is obviously a 250th of a second shutter speed. That's the highest you can go with strobe. So at that point, those were the lights that it was the pro photo, like the fastest pro photos or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so it was a funny, pulled it all off, but that was my biggest campaign to date. I mean, we had like, it was in People magazine. It was everywhere. I remember flying on the plane like a few months later and like seeing somebody like next to me with a People magazine, and they flipped it over, and I was like, oh, there's my ad in this giant magazine. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember the first time I saw mine anywhere. Hell, I found out I had a shot in Times Square, but I had no clue. I was just
Oh wow.
searching that client on the internet, and I saw a picture. I was like, "Well, somebody should have told me. That'd have been nice to
Yeah.
to have seen that." Did you get the girl Did you get the girl on set? Like, get the shot on set, or did you have to use one of the ones you shot her on black?
Oh, I mean, I think they Frankensteined her. They
Yeah.
just took like we had so many shots. I think they took like an arm from one shot, like a leg from another shot, its face from another shot. They handled the post. We basically just handed them a hard drive at the end of the shoot, and they just like Frankenstein everything together with their retouching team.
How much of your
That
own posts
that's
do
what
you
they
handle
wanted to
now?
do.
Yeah, yeah. I've had
Um,
clients
you
like
know,
that.
I do most of it. Color, if it's really and needs a lot of cleanup, then I'll send it out to a retoucher. But for the most part, I do 90% of it
Yeah,
myself. But I shoot pretty clean. Like most of my stuff is all in camera, natural light, and then if I need to, then I can, yeah, like I said, if it needs extra retouching, I'll hire like a professional retoucher. I don't touch that shit.
yeah. No, I'm with
Too
you. I
much
mean,
for me.
most of my stuff's the same. I get most of it in camera. I do some minor retouching, um, tweak the colors a little bit, that kind of
Yeah,
thing,
yeah,
saturation, black levels, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I
yeah.
don't do a
Same here.
ton. But so tell me about this. I saw on your podcast. First of all, tell me about
Yeah,
that. What made you start? When did you start it? And what made you decide you wanted to start it?
the
And
podcast.
yeah, the podcast.
Yeah, I went through, I think there was a big part of me that, once a while back, I went through a bit of a hard time with business and all that stuff. And I ended up doing this emotional intelligence and leadership training down and out in LA for a couple of years. And my friend Lewis Howes like interviewed me on his podcast while I was out there. And I was like, man, this is a lot of fun. I didn't really know much about podcasts at that point and so his podcast producer was out there as well, and I was like, man, I have such a great network. I should start a podcast and just interview all my friends. And at that point, it was like, the first person I asked was Scooter, to interview him, and he didn't even know what a podcast was at that point.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a big inspiration of it. So a lot of it's been, kind of just a mental game take as well on creativity and then creative entrepreneurship. Because it's, as it's up and down. It's not easy, and there's a lot of emotions to navigate through it, and there's a lot of mental game to navigate through it. So, a lot of my interviews have been like, what's kind of the process, the mental game to become successful. And those like a lot of the creatives that I've interviewed, it's like it comes down to a strong mental game and persistence and resilience and being able to pick back up and move forward. And so that's been a common theme. But that was the inspiration to do the podcast, was a being interviewed for on my friend podcast, but then that opened my eyes to it, and then just kind of seeing like where I could go with it and like the people that I could interview. And that's where I started the podcast. And then just it's been, and I tried to photograph everyone that I interview, so kind of tying it together overall with what I do as a photographer.
So are you doing some of these podcasts? Are you doing them on location, or do you have them all come to you, or how does that work? Especially
um
with
well, now I have no idea, but
yeah,
right here, with like this is, but this is like a week ago that all this stuff happened.
yeah.
But I try to do everything in person. I mean, I do everything in person, or I have done everything in person. So I'll either go to that person, especially if they have like a location that really tells their story. I want to photo, like if they're an artist, like I love photographing artists in their amongst their work and that kind of thing. Whereas, if it's somebody who it's more their they're a thought leader, then sometimes I'll just have them come to me, like right here in the studio. I have like a photo studio set up right here, or that I can tear up and set up right here now, so I'll shoot people in the studio, and then we'll do the interview here. So it's a mix of both, but I always try to do it in person.
Yeah, it's a little harder for me since I'm in Charlotte. Uh, it's hard to talk some of these people into coming from New York down to Charlotte, from LA to Charlotte. So I've been doing
Yeah,
mostly this Zoom thing, but it seems to be working so far. So I can't complain. You're the first
yeah.
person
Well,
I've talked to who has their own podcast.
oh wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know a lot of photographers that have podcasts. There's not very many that I know of.
yeah, yeah. I don't know too many. Yeah, I've told a couple of people, and they're just like, "Oh, okay," but they're not interested in, like, some other photographer friends. They're like, "That's cool," but they have no interest in doing it themselves, which I get because it wasn't the thing I wanted to do. I mean, when I first decided to do it, it wasn't. It's not exactly my comfort zone, I guess, and that's the thing. That's why I did it, was to push me out of it a little bit because I prefer to be a little more. I'm probably a little more introverted unless I'm on set, and then I'm
Yeah.
definitely more extroverted, but I don't talk as much. So for me
Yeah.
to do it and pushing me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big thing for me too, is pushing myself out of my comfort zone of being behind a microphone, because I've always had a hard time like communicating and being an extrovert in that sense. So that was also, now that you say that, mention that, it reminds me that yeah, that was a big part of starting the podcast for myself. To push myself out of my comfort zone, get better at speaking.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's definitely helped, and I'm enjoying it now, where at first I was a little freaked out about it, and but now I'm enjoying it, and I'm having a good time with it, and just gotta keep, trying to get guests. Sometimes it's a little difficult, I guess, for me. I have getting guests occasionally, but it's slowly starting to get easier, I think, depending on who I'm reaching out to, but,
Yeah,
I noticed
well,
a
now's your
couple.
time.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hit everyone up
Yeah.
now, because everybody's just in the office doing nothing. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm doing all kinds of stuff, but
Yeah, I'm doing more than I thought I was going to, but I think I told you before we started this whole thing. I probably got about another week or so before I'm going to start coming up with things to do. I'm
yeah,
going crazy, man. And I did see on your
yeah.
podcast you got scammed, but I didn't get a chance to listen to it. What was that about?
Oh, yeah. This is something to be aware of, actually. I would warn all photographers. I just got this email one day, and I was like traveling. This was like about a year ago. I was traveling back and forth to LA quite a bit. I was just traveling all over the place. And this guy just emailed me, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm a writer for W Magazine, and he's like, I want to do a shoot." And he had like all the stuff laid out very, in a very convincing, for somebody that knows the industry. I was like, "Oh, this makes sense." And the way that clients are now, you're like, "Yeah, sure, yeah, I could see this makes sense." And so it was this whole ordeal, and essentially, like, and partially, I wasn't paying full attention because I was like traveling, I wasn't home. um and they ended up, this guy was like, "Okay, we need you to do this shoot. It's like an advertorial shoot, so there's a fee, but the model agency is going to take care. We've already chose the model agency. They're going to take care of the production." And they're like, "Well, so we just need you. We're gonna send you a check for whatever." I was like, 59, or it was like $4,900 or something like that. And we just like, "We'll just need you to write a check, pay them up front." Okay, fine, sure, that's normally how things work. It was like, I don't remember how much it was. It was like $4,200 or something like that. And they're just like, "We'll need you to pay it just right, send the money to the model agency, and then we'll pay you the remainder of uh everything after the shoot." Right, whatever, okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
was like, and then like back and forth, I talked to the guy at the model agency. The guy was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, cool, just let me know." And
How
like
was that
like
connection when you talked to him? Was the phone connection, or did you just email and text?
no, I talked to him on the phone. He like
Yeah.
called me.
Was the
And
connection decent?
what do you mean?
Or did it sound weird when you talked to him, or did it sound just clean and normal? The reason I'm asking is
uh,
because I've had, from now that you're saying it, I've had the same thing happen multiple times. Um, but the last time it happened to me, I looked the person up, found him on LinkedIn. I think it was the last time. Found the person on LinkedIn, found the number, called the phone number. I think it was maybe on the email, but it sounded a little weird. The phone number sounded strange. Like when we talked back and forth, there sounded like there were some glitches in the phone, and it didn't sound like a normal cell phone. So
oh,
I sent an email and saw that when they opened the email, they were in Nigeria, and this guy was supposed to be in Chicago.
oh,
So that's why I was
interesting.
wondering how the phone sounded.
Huh. Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, I think it sounded fine. I don't remember. I think it was this
Yeah,
dude's cell phone. They ended up being in Long Island, because I tracked some stuff down. Because anyways, so I'll finish that after. So like,
yeah,
yeah, what happened essentially? They just kind of, everything that they said was kind of like on point with how production works, and The only thing I was like, I was like, oh, let me see the clothes. They sent me some like images of the clothes, and I was like, okay, doesn't seem like a fashion shoot, but whatever. Clients are clients these days. Like at this point, I'm like, you know, you're just like, okay, yeah, sure. Like maybe that like it was kind
Right.
of a little bit of a flag, but also kind of like believable and normal. I was like,
Well, you never know what a stylist is going to do anymore and how they're
yeah,
going to
like
put it together. So you could
clients.
be like, all right, yeah, I get it.
Exactly. I was like,
Yeah.
clients are clients. They'll pick the weirdest shit, and you're just like, okay, you got to roll with it. And all right. So everything just kind of like the whole process, everything just like nothing really stood out as like this is really off. And everything, and I've been doing this. I've been a photographer for like 15 years, and they played this game so well, and I just, bought it. And everything seemed normal and everything. Then it got to the shoot day, like the day before the shoot. They're like, "Oh, where do you want to shoot?" And I was like, I'm used to shooting now, run and gun quite a bit too, because
Right.
obviously clients want to shoot that way. And I was like, "Oh, let's shoot here." At this location. The day before, I was like, "Oh, you know what? I want to go. Let's shoot over at this location." So I sent them an email, and then I never heard back from them. And then I was like, "This is strange." So like later that night, I called them. They didn't pick up. They didn't pick up. I was like, what is going on here? And then I Googled this guy's email address and found something on a photo editor that talked about the whole scam. And I was like, motherfucker, like this dude totally got
Oh.
me. And I
So
had
you
like
had you
taken,
already gotten the check and sent?
yeah. So, oh yeah, that was the other thing is they had sent a check, but I was not home. I was in LA. So I had my assistant come to my house, take a photo of the check and send it to me so that I knew that I had it in hand. Cause I was like, I'm not going to send you I'm not going to send somebody the money if I don't have money in hand.
Right. Yeah.
Who would have thought that they would write a check that would bounce 2 weeks later after they had gotten the money that I sent them? So that's
Yeah.
essentially what happened. And then I called the bank. I was like, I immediately called the bank and I was like, is there any way to like reverse this and or like to like call like write like stop that check payment or whatever? I actually sent them a bank check from my bank online, like you can just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
have a check
Yeah.
sent. But that they take out the money right away once you send
Immediately.
that
Yeah.
check. And then I was like, shit, I just got fucked.
Yeah.
And I sent I asked the bank, I started talking to the bank, I talked to the fraud department. They're like, yeah, like they tracked it down. They found this like, I forgot what those things are called. It was like kind of like a Western Union,
Oh
but
yeah,
it's
like
called
those
something
check
else.
cashing places or
Yeah, and I
something like
found
that.
like they
Yeah.
gave me the location that it was cashed at, and like I called them, and they're like, it's gone.
Yeah.
Can't do anything about it. And I went to the police, and they're like, well, print everything out and come back. Like this is like a civil case, or this is like this is like a fraud case, blah blah blah. So I print everything out, and I go back to the station the next day, and somebody else comes on. They're like, oh no, you got to sue this person, and like we
Yeah. They
can't do
don't
anything
care.
about this.
Yeah.
And I was
They
like,
don't care at
who am
all.
I gonna sue? Like, this is this person who like is total fraud. Like, how do I even know if this person is this person? So essentially, you know, I lost four grand or whatever it was. I'm gonna just eat it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had it happen. Luckily, I didn't send them the money, but I've had people try the same thing with me like probably 3 or 4 times. I even had it with Craigslist where they go, hey, we want to buy the TV you're selling, but I'm in Afghanistan and I can't get it. So I'm going to send somebody to get it, but I have to pay them $50 to get it. Will you add another 50? Will you give them 50 or whatever? They'll give you a check for the thing, and will you give them $50 back or
Oh
something?
yeah, I saw
But
a
the
bunch of
last
that.
one I had, man, they sent me a certified check from the bank, from a bank. But the whole thing was weird because it was some shoot for it was another deal. It was like for a magazine, but I can't remember what magazine. Or maybe it was for some company. Anyway, whatever it was, they were based in Chicago,
Oh,
whoever it
interesting.
was. And so I looked it up. The guy was real. The name that they were using was real. The company was real. Then they said they were going to FedEx me a check from their lawyer, and the FedEx came from California, from Florida. So I get
Huh.
this FedEx package from Florida, and I was like, "Why is the FedEx package from Florida?" And the guy said, "Oh, that's just where our lawyer is." Okay. Well, you open up the check, it's from a plumbing company. At the top, it's like some kind of plumbing company is
Huh.
what the check was from. And he said, well, that's one of our sponsors or some kind of thing. It was for, I can't remember what it was for, but it was on a certified check. So you take it to the bank. So I was like, I'm not putting this in my account. I'm going to cash the check because this way seems way too sketchy, too much like the last two or three of these things that I've had happen.
Oh,
So
jeez.
I go to the bank and the cashier is literally just about to cash the check for like $3,500 or something like that. And she is like, okay, this looks good. I'm going to go ahead and cash it because she looked it up. The account was real and all that. I said, you might want to double check this because I have a feeling there's something not right about this whole deal. So she called over her boss. The manager came over and looked at it, told her to hold on. She went, looked up, and found out that somehow these guys had gotten counterfeit checks on this actual account.
Oh, wow.
So that account was being drained of money and these guys were getting it, but then they'd find out and cancel the check on you. So they were screwing me, screwing this company in New Jersey who was a plumbing company or whatever they were, and then they were getting their money on top of it. So yeah.
Jeez, man. People are shysters, man.
Anytime somebody sends me something, goes, okay, we're going to send you a check up front, and now that check you have to take money out and pay this person, or you got to pay them ahead of time from this point forward. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I'm like, no checks. Just
Yeah,
ACH that shit to me.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not doing it anymore. Uh, Dude, besides photography, I know you're into all kinds of other stuff. What painting, your health, all that kind of stuff. What's the biggest thing you're into right now besides photography?
I mean, and like, the podcast, but like I'm making hats. I've been making hats for a while, for like a year
How did that
now.
come about, dude? I know you was it something you were just wearing and people was like, "That's a cool hat," and did you make your
Well,
own
yeah,
kind
I
of
mean,
thing, or what happened
I
there?
became obsessed with hats like probably 4 or 5 years ago from a friend of mine named Satya. She had a hat factory here in New York, and she was like, "Hey, you got to come make a hat." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, sure." I never worn a hat like that in my life, and then um, ended up going to a hat factory. It was really cool. It was one of the oldest hat factories in Manhattan. Like Frank Sinatra used to make his hats there and stuff like that. And she'd
Oh
kind of
wow,
taken it over from the company that owned it. Um, and she's the one that really got me into hats just in general and hat making. And so I would go in there and I'd make stuff. I'd trade her like, some hats for one of her lookbooks and stuff like that. And and then that was just kind of like the start of it. Then she had to close the factory down because it was just too much to maintain and all this stuff. And so at that point, I had probably had like 12 or 15 hats just that I had gotten through the process, and we stripped a lot of them down and reblocked them kind of before she closed the factory. And over a couple of years, I just started like designing. I would pick one up and design it or paint it or do some different things to it. And then eventually, like, when I wear them out, people are just like, "Oh man, that's amazing! I want, where'd you get that hat?" Like, people kept asking me where I'd get it, and then eventually, I ran into Justin Bieber at the Soho House, and he was like, "Yo, man, I like your hat," and I was like, "Oh," I was like, "I made it." He's like, "Sweet, man." And there was like some other, a couple of, then somebody asked me to make one for somebody else that was for a red carpet thing, and I was like, maybe I should just like get this formalize this stuff a little bit more. So I ended up like I was trying to find like sourcing it and sourcing out like people that would be able to like block the hats for me, and couldn't find anybody that would do such a low number. So I ended up just buying all the tools to make them myself. So I just been, it's been about a year, a little over a year that I've been doing them from scratch. I'll just block them and then hand stitch everything inside and like the sweatbands and then design them from like beginning to end.
are you glad that
Um,
worked out that way? That you're doing it yourself as opposed to getting somebody else
yeah,
to?
yeah. I have much more control over the whole process, and like I've learned a lot through it. And it's definitely, I can do them whenever I want, and I don't have to
Right.
rely on anybody else to like block something out. So even now I'm like, I'm just finishing up a couple hats to send out a couple
So what do you mean by
clients.
blocking the hats?
So blocking is like creating the shape of the crown. So
Okay.
this shape here, the crown is like the top of the hat, and you can have all kinds of different shapes. And there's like you basically shape it. You have to steam it, and then you shape it over a wooden block that's shaped in this shape at this size. I have
Okay.
to have I have to have a wooden block in each size, in different sizes for people the size of heads. And I have like I have like a small, medium, and large basically,
Yeah.
and then I can use sizing foam to like get in between sizes and things like that. But the blocking is the actual shape of the crown,
Okay.
and then you have to like flatten out the brim. It's a bit of work to get
How long
it
does
to
it
like.
take you to do one?
It's probably a good 4 or 5 hours from like start to finish, depending on what I do to the hat, however I design it. Some hats take a little bit longer than others.
Do you have like a price range, or are they all the same price, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, it's all one price. I mean, they're the 1250, but I've been doing kind of an introductory rate for like $800.
Okay.
Um, but which is about what custom hats. If you go to the high end custom hats that are all like handmade, that's about what they are. To
Right.
different hat makers. So, but I'm just doing this. I'm doing this. It's kind of like an art project. They're like custom art projects essentially. Like they're all one of a kind. Like every hat's been different compared to the next, even if it's just a few elements that are different.
Right.
So, when people have them, they get something that nobody else has.
That's very cool, man. Yeah. They look cool.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I'm not much of
So
a hat
yes,
guy. If I was, I'd probably get one. Well, I know I'd
yeah,
get one.
yeah. I mean, it's fun. Like hats are for some people are hat people, some people aren't. But I love them. I'm obsessed with them, and then I just make them for myself whenever I want. That's kind of the biggest reason.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. Especially if you can make them for yourself and then you end up selling them, making
Yeah,
some money off of it.
yeah, yeah.
That's a
Yeah, I
good
mean
gig.
it's definitely paid for all the I had invested a few thousand into like all the tools and everything, so it's definitely paid for itself.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah. Hell,
Yeah.
if you get somebody like Justin Bieber wearing them,
Yeah, I still have
you
yet to
could
get one on him, but it'll
kind of
happen.
work that out, man. You can do it like Beats.
That's
Just put
right.
on all your celebrity friends, get them all wearing your hats, and next thing you know, won't be doing anything other than sitting in that room making hats all day long.
Exactly.
But then you can sell them for $5,000 a piece.
Yeah, they'll have to because like there's no. I mean, I still make way more money than doing photography.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, I mean, last question. What is the strangest or most interesting thing that's happened to you since you've started in this business? And it could be any kind of range from just like completely freakish to just really cool.
I would say all of this. Just some of the most random like celebrity hangouts that I would have never in my life I thought I would have been a part of. Like I've had dinner with Jay-Z and
Damn.
watched a Chance the Rapper show with him, Beyonce, and Usher before. I've taken Justin and Usher out on the town before after fashion week on a fashion week night. I went on vacation with Usher.
Damn, man.
So the place that I grew up in Seattle, in the suburbs, growing up, I would have never thought in my life that I would live the life that I've lived up until now.
So they all asking you for free pictures?
I mean, like, no, some of them have hired me. Most of the times, like I've shot Justin for when other brands paid, and then I shot him for the album cover with Cody Simpson that never came out.
Uh,
They paid, and that's a bummer because I have so many
yeah.
great images that I cannot even touch, and they've not seen the light of day. But they paid me very well for it.
And you can't even use them.
Nope,
So
I can only use the ones that they've put
they
out
put out.
publicly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That
you know.
sucks.
But I shot Justin at his home one time. He called me and asked me to shoot him. I was like, sure, I'll come over and shoot. So,
That's cool.
that was not paid, but fine, whatever. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I've definitely
Yeah.
made some money from shooting him through other brands and other things. So,
You get Jay-Z and Beyonce to get you over there to shoot something for free or
I
just shoot
probably
anything.
would.
Yeah, oh, I would. Yeah,
Yeah,
if Jay Z calls like, "Hey, I need you to shoot something," but I'm not paying you. I'm like, oh, whatever. You just tell me when and where, and I will be there.
exactly. Exactly.
All right, dude. Well, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Anybody
Yeah,
out there
absolutely.
watching, if you're watching, listening, all that kind of stuff, like this thing, subscribe to it, thumbs up it, whatever the hell you do to say that you like a podcast, share it, all that kind of stuff. And listen for the next one. See you guys.